Good morning, everyone. I hope you are all doing great this morning. And as you can tell, let me get over here to the comments. Good morning, Carrie. As you can tell, Rodney is not here this morning. He's fine. He's fine. He just had an appointment. He was going to be driving this morning, so he's not going to be able to be on because you can't stream while you're in a car driving down the road. So it's just me this morning, and that means I need you guys more than ever out there in the audience because there's not going to be any conversation if you're not there. So, Carrie, right now, with Jacqueline, right now, it's mostly on you two. I'm looking forward to more jumping in. And I just want to let you know that I've had a season lately of deep appreciation for the people who have been an influence in my life, poured into my life. Good morning, Robin. So glad you're here joining us too. I'll excuse me while I take a sip. And so that deep appreciation has led me to something I wanted to share with you this morning. And y'all, I wish I had Rodney's skill on the computer. I wish I knew how to get a picture up here on the screen, but I don't. So I'm just going to share with you as near as I can from my phone. And I apologize, I should have brought this up already. Let's see here. Where is that? I just better look for it, I guess. So I saw somebody had posted a picture of a program from a church I had not even attended in my life, but I was surprised to find that there was a name on it that I did recognize. There it is. And let's see if I can get this particular one up and maybe share it with you. It was on just yesterday. Anyway, it was, that's not what I want. Well, I'm not finding it here. But anyway, if I scroll across it, I'll show it to you. But anyway, it was the name on the program. It was from it was a church bulletin, actually, from a Baptist church here in Huntsville. And the name that I noticed on the bulletin was G.D. Barrett. Now, it instantly brought back memories for me because on this program, he was the pastor of Huntsville Park Baptist Church, but I had known him as the interim pastor at the church that I went to when I was a teenager and into early adulthood. And so several times we were between pastors and sometimes for a long time. And Brother Barrett, even though he was retired, always came and filled in as the interim pastor for us. So we loved him dearly. But y'all, I have to, when I tell you this story about him, I have to set the stage. So Brother Barrett, oh, thank you, Robin. So the rest of you know what Robin said. Thank you. So here's setting the stage. Brother Barrett and his wife, Rochella, were both elderly. He was retired. And he was a tall man, always stood ramrod straight. I kind of wondered if he had been military, but he said he had never served. But he was obviously he was older. He wore these glasses with really thick lenses, like bottom of Coke bottle thick lenses, which made his eyes look huge behind them. His hair was gray, combed straight back. He was almost always wearing a suit. And I say almost because when I was in a newlywed, he and his wife lived in the same apartment complex that I did. And sometimes they would invite me over. And of course, then he wasn't wearing a suit. But at church, I don't care what it was for church, he was always wearing a suit and tie and a pin that was an award he had won for faithful attendance in Sunday school over the years. So Anyway, and he would stand up there at the front of the church. I rarely saw him crack a smile, to be honest with you. He looked very somber, and just the natural lines on his face, I guess, he looked pretty stern. Maybe it was the glasses, I don't know. But anyway, so he was a little intimidating, and then on top of that, he's what I would call a fire and brimstone preacher. Now, if you don't know what that is, that's someone who really puts a lot of emphasis on the judgment of sin. Now, he talked about the grace of God too, but he really got animated when he was talking about the judgment on sin. And there wasn't a single sermon I remember ever listening to from him that didn't include some warnings about smoking, drinking, dancing, and playing cards. So as you can imagine, yeah, as you can imagine, this seemed a little intimidating for me. We did play cards at home. I didn't want Brother Barrett to find out about that because I didn't want to hear from him. But I wasn't going to stop playing cards either because I loved those games with my family. But I loved Brother Barrett too. And there was no doubt that he loved us, even though he seemed very stern. The only other thing I remember about him really is that he loved banana pudding. And so he really relished when we had church suppers, and he would hint around that somebody needed to make banana pudding and bring it to the church supper. Anyway, so as you can imagine, with all of this sternness and this somberness that I saw in him, when he did something surprising one day in the pulpit, it left a deep impression on me. And this is what he did on a Sunday evening. He stepped to the pulpit, and without saying anything else, he just began what we thought was the sermon. And this is what he said. There was a man who knew a pilot, and he thought it must be a wonderful thing to be able to fly up into the air like that pilot did every day. And the man came to the pilot and asked him, "How much would you charge me to take me up in the air?" And the pilot said, "It's $50. Y'all, this is a long time ago. It's a lot more than that now. But this is what Brother Barrett said. It's $50. The man thought about it and he said, "Oh, that's kind of steep. I don't know. I don't think I can pay that. It just seemed like a lot." And the pilot said, "Okay, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll take you up in the air, and if you don't say a single word the entire time you're up in the air, then the ride is free. But if you say even one word, then you have to pay the full $50. So the man considered this and he said, "All right, I think I can do that. Yeah, I'll give it a try." So they went up in the air. The first thing the pilot did was turn the plane upside down. And then he did all these dives and swirls and loops, everything he could do to evoke some kind of response out of that man who was sitting behind him. But he heard not a word. So finally, the pilot landed the plane. And as they disembarked, the pilot said, "Well, I guess the ride is free. I really thought I was going to be able to get you to say something, but you never did." And the man replied, "Well, I really thought for a minute there I was going to say something." And the pilot said, "Oh, yeah? When was that?" And the man said, "When my wife fell out." Now, y'all, the entire church erupted in laughter. We'd never heard Brother Barrett tell a joke before. And just about the time that the laughter is abating just a little bit, Brother Barrett steps close to the microphone, leans in, and says gleefully, "That doesn't have anything to do with the sermon. I just thought I'd tell it." Well, the laughter started afresh. People were holding their sides. They were doubled over. They were crying tears of laughter. I'm not joking you when I tell you it probably went on for a full 10 minutes. 10 minutes of nothing but laughter. I don't remember what his sermon was about that night, but I will never forget that moment when Brother Barrett became a comedian. Now, I know you've probably had some preachers in your life that meant something to you or that you remember things about too, right? So if you do, here's what I want you to do is put their name in the comments. Put their name in the comments, okay? And I'm going to be looking for those. I'm going to put it up on the screen when you do it. And let's see what Robin's saying here. One side of my family was Jewish and the other side of my family was hanky waving and altar calling, that fire and brimstone preaching. It was the Church of Christ in Christian Union. I hear you, Robin. I hear you. And that's really quite a disparity in the way that people worship. That's interesting. And yes, it makes it even more funny because he was never like that. It was such a shock and surprise, but I've never forgotten it. So the other preacher that really had an influence on me and that I remembered, and y'all, I'm taking out my Bible because I want to share something with you that he had shared with me. His name was Reverend Jimmy Jackson, and everybody at our church called him Brother Jimmy. He recently passed away after a long time as the pastor there. I think it was like 40 years. I don't really remember how long. But I know when I first came to know Brother Jimmy, he was new there at the church. This was Whitesburg Baptist Church in Huntsville. And he was new, his family was new, and there was a lot of excitement about him being there. He had come to us from a church in Florida, and we were all really impressed with Brother Jimmy. His love for people really showed. But even better, he was a great preacher. And y'all, he was not fire and brimstone, not saying he couldn't get excited, but he was not a fire and brimstone preacher. He was a preacher that loved to dig into the word, find the gold, and impart to you the treasures that he had found. And I still remember some of his sermons. Now, I can't say that about most preachers at all. And I don't even remember all of Brother Jimmy's sermons, and certainly not even most. But there was a couple of them that I will never forget because of the impact that they had on me in hearing it. And this was one of them. I'm not going to preach the sermon, but I do want to share with you what he shared with us from the scriptures. And it was in Genesis chapter 5. So if you've got a Bible and you want to get that out, then I invite you to do that. And y'all, it's from the genealogy. Now, I know some of you may have heard this before, and if you have, that's great. I'm putting this out there for the people who have never heard this because this was spine-tingling to me. So here it is in verse 3. It starts out saying, and Adam lived 130 years and begat a son in his own likeness after his own image, and he called his name Seth. And the days of Adam after he had begotten Seth were 800 years, and he begat sons and daughters. And it goes on from there, and all the days that Adam lived were 930 years, and he died. And then it talks about Seth, who had just been mentioned, and how many years he lived before he had a particular son, and then how many years he lived after that, and that he had more sons and daughters, and then how old he was when he died. And then it talked about one of Seth's, and on it goes. And y'all, I don't mind telling you, when we get to the place where he's preaching on the genealogy, we were going through the book of Genesis, and I think we all thought he was going to skim over the genealogy. He did not. He detailed this, and let me tell you what he showed us. So the first name mentioned in Genesis 3, and if you've got a piece of paper, write this down because this is going to amaze you if you've never seen it before. The first name mentioned is Adam, and the meaning of Adam is man. That's what the name means. So write that down. Hey, Motor Gospel, we are so glad you are here. Thank you so much for being here. The next name mentioned is Seth. Now, if you remember, Seth was born after Cain and Abel, and after Cain had killed Abel, and God gave Adam and Eve another son, and they named him Seth and said, because God has appointed to us another son. And so Seth's name means appointed. So write that down. All right, then we've got Enos. Enos. And that is Seth's son. And Enos's name means mortal. It means mortal. Okay, so write that down. Be sure to write down these meanings. They're going to be important. Enos begat Canaan. And Canaan's name means sorrow. Sorrow. Write that one down too. And then after Canaan, and this is the one I have trouble pronouncing, y'all, his name is Mahalaleel. I think I said it right. Mahalaleel. And his name means the blessed God, or the praise of God. The blessed God is what you should write down. See that EL at the end of the name? That always means God. So Michael, Gabriel, that always has something to do with God. Okay, so then Mahalaleel begat Jared. And Jared's name literally means shall come down. Shall come down. Shall descend or shall come down. So take a minute and write that one down. Are y'all keeping up with this? Tell me in the comments if you're writing this down and keeping up with it. Okay, and then after Jared was Enoch. Now, y'all remember who Enoch is. Enoch is the one that, and then he was not, because he was walking with God and God took him. So he did not die, God just took him. Enoch's name means teaching. It means teaching. So write that one down too. And then Enoch had Methuselah. Y'all remember who Methuselah is? Methuselah is the man who lived the longest in the Bible, 969 years. And Methuselah's name literally means his death shall bring, or when he goes, it will come. There's two ways to interpret it, but it's basically the same sort of idea. When he goes, it will come. His death shall bring about. Okay, so that's what you write down for Methuselah. And then Methuselah had Lamech. And Lamech's name means powerful despair. Powerful despair. Now, y'all, Lamech was the father of Noah. And you know who Noah is. Noah and the ark. Noah was the one that God spoke to and let him know, I'm going to destroy the entire world because of the violence in it. And I want you to build an ark. And that's what Noah did. So all the days of Noah, and then it tells us that Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay, but I'm not going to give you the, and by the way, they may have been triplets, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, because it doesn't give us a year when they were born, or it doesn't even say to us. All it says is Noah was 500 years old, and Noah begat Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So that may mean that they were born together in the year that he was 500 years old. So that may be the first indication of triplets in the Bible. Isn't that cool? All right, so now you've got all the name meanings from Adam all the way down to Noah. And if you'll notice, there's a message there through the names in the genealogy. And that message is Man appointed mortal sorrow. The blessed God shall come down, teaching. His death shall bring despair, and I didn't tell you Noah's name. Noah means hope. Now, this could be said of all the events that happened in Genesis from that time up to the flood. Man was appointed mortal sorrow. The blessed God came down teaching. He had Noah teaching, and he sent his messengers teaching. And his death, that was Methuselah, his death shall bring despair and hope. And y'all, Lamech did not live as long as his father, Methuselah. He died before Methuselah did. It was when Methuselah died in the same year, and maybe even in the same week, that Methuselah passed away, that God told Noah to go into the ark, and he closed the door, and the flood began. His death, Methuselah's death, brought despair and hope. But y'all, this message is also true of Jesus. Even there, it's pointing to Jesus. Man appointed mortal sorrow, but the blessed God, Jesus himself, shall come down teaching, and his death shall bring despair for some, but also hope. Isn't that a fantastic message? And isn't it amazing to find out that even in the genealogies, God is always talking to us? I love knowing that. God is always talking to us. He is always around us. Now, why is it we don't hear him all the time? That's the question. I think I don't hear him a lot because I don't have my ear tuned to hear him. You know, we always think that surely if God speaks to me, I'm going to hear some kind of audible voice like Paul did on the road to Damascus, or like Daniel did when God was telling him what to do. But God is always doing a new thing. So when he speaks to us, he not only speaks to us sometimes in an audible voice, sometimes it's in a voice that maybe sounds like ours. And there are other times he'll be speaking to us, obviously, out of his word. But sometimes you'll be reading something else, and suddenly God will speak truth to you out of that. Sometimes it will be out of nature. Remember in Romans, it talks about how all of nature is declaring the eternal attributes and characteristics of God, so that every man is without excuse. And in Revelation, I think it tells us that everything that was made for his pleasure and his glory. And the Bible tells us what it is God's pleasure to do is reveal himself to us. So even in nature, he is revealed. And if we are tuned in, we will see him. We will hear him. We will hear him speak continually. And wouldn't that be comforting? Wouldn't that be comforting for you to know deep down inside your soul that God is with you always, that he has never left you, that he is never going to forsake you, and that you can be of good courage in everything he calls you to do, because he is right there. And the one who has called you has already prepared the way, has already equipped you. Even if you cannot see further than just one step in front of you, and even if you don't feel like you are enough or like you have enough, God would not have called you into it if he hadn't already prepared you and already prepared the way, because this is his work. This is His work, not ours. We don't have the responsibility for it. We don't have the responsibility for the outcome. We just have the responsibility to obey and receive the blessing. Isn't it amazing to think that we can be a part of what God is doing? That God allows us to be a part of what He is doing? He doesn't need us. God could choose to do it any way He wants to, but He has ordained it this way so that He can fellowship with us as we partake with Him of His work. I love that. And I'm so thankful for Brother Jimmy that he brought us that sermon, that he brought us that knowledge out of the Bible. James, what questions do you have for me? And yes, this is a live stream. And we're glad you're here. And the others too. I noticed several others popping in. Waleed, thank you for being here. And Jacqueline, I've already said hello to you. Looking to see who else is in here. Motor Gospel, that's Aaron. Aaron, I'm so glad you're here too. Thank you for being here. That's very encouraging to me. So James, you said you had a question. You have questions for me. If you want to put them in the comments, we've got just about 4 minutes left. And because yes, y'all, it's just going to be a half-hour show today. There is no way I could fill up a whole hour. Well, I probably could, but y'all would get bored pretty fast. I'm just hearing me, I'm pretty sure. But if you have any other questions or if you have anything you want to say, I haven't seen a name of a single preacher in here yet. I know you have one that has influenced you in some way, even if it's an online preacher, and that's one preacher minister I can give a shout out to is Aaron Schwartzbart at Motor Gospel, because I've had the pleasure of hearing him many times teach and speak, and I'm very grateful for him. So Waleed is asking me, is the Pope a great guy? Well, Waleed, here's what I can tell you. I have not met him personally. I don't know him. But I can tell you, he was created by God, not as Pope, as a man. And he was created in the image of God, and God loves him dearly. Not because of what he's done, or not because of who he is, or what his status is. God loves him because God created him. So that's my answer there. Is he a great guy? I don't know. But that's up to God, because that's God's creation. Oh, thank you, Carrie. I appreciate you saying that. I'm just grateful to be able to bring it to you. I keep thinking if no one had ever brought this to me, I'd still be in the dark about it. There's so many other things that good preachers, that's another one I can give a shout out to. Brother Joe Kress in the church that I've been a member of for years. He's one of those people who loves to dig into the scripture and bring out of it all the treasures that he's found and share them with us. And there's been a few moments with Brother Joe that I have definitely felt like, wow, I would never have known that without you telling me that, because Brother Joe even studies the Hebrew, and I don't know Hebrew. I don't know how to study the Hebrew. So I was just grateful that he was showing me these things. And I'd love to share some of those things with you someday. Maybe I'll have Brother Joe on. That would be great. I'll have to ask Brother Joe if he'll come on the show and share one of those, because I remember the day he showed it to me, it brought tears to my eyes, tears of gratitude and gratefulness that God had made himself apparent, that he had made Jesus apparent even in the first line of Genesis. It was wonderful. Oh, thank you, Jacqueline. I love you too. And y'all, we've got just seconds left now. So I just want to tell you, as you go about your day, please remember that God is with you and you are not alone. So be of good courage. Bye, everybody. Hope you have a great day.